Episode 6 of Murder Drones landed a couple of weeks ago, and without spoiling too much up front, it's easily my new favorite episode of the series so far. I don't know what I can say that hasn't already been said by thousands of others by this point. It's simply amazing. The music's on point as ever, its comedic moments were great, and the show's overall quality keeps getting better. If you told me in late 2021, after watching the pilot episode, that I would one day have my jaw drop so hard it fell off my face and shattered into a million pieces in reaction to a certain character's possible death, I would have said you were crazy. But here I am. Seriously, it took me 2 days to reassemble this thing. If you haven't seen Murder Drones or don't know what it is, it's about a bunch of sentient robots called worker drones living on an exoplanet, Copper 9. Copper 9 had a human colony thanks to corporate overlords J.C. Jensen right up until the planet's core collapsed, leading to the death of its human population and the planet plunging into an eternal winter. J.C. Jensen sent groups of disassembly drones, or murder drones, to kill all the worker drones to prevent them from doing things like rebelling against humanity. The worker drone's savior is one Uzi Dorman, an angsty teen girl with a railgun. And daddy issues. Can't forget the daddy issues. Oh, and she befriends a cinnamon roll, one of the murder drones, and who becomes her possible love interest. The story is way more complicated than that, but that's basically Murder Drones in a nutshell. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Murder Drones is a batshit insane and amazing series, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you haven't done so, I recommend you watch the entire series before continuing with this video. Like I said a moment ago, I watched the pilot episode way back when it first dropped in late 2021. Even though I liked it, it took me until not long before episode 5 released to give the show another fair shot. That's because I was kinda dissatisfied with the pilot. It felt kinda rough, and I wanted it to be more serious than it was. Then again, it was a pilot. You'd expect a pilot to be a bit rough, and I didn't want to harp on it too much because of that. Besides, it was still pretty good, all things considered. And my opinions on the pilot are much more positive nowadays. I told myself in late 2021 that if this show ever got more episodes, I might come back to it and see if things have improved. And I did. Eventually, but I'm glad I did, because the show did improve. Drastically. Almost to the point where watching the pilot now feels like watching a completely different show in a way. If you're like me, you watched all the episodes in order and was sold on the show's premise by the end of episode 2. That's when Murder Drones started playing its hand. Eldritch abominations, cosmic horrors, the absolute solver's role in the story coming to prominence, Tessa's first appearance, Sin's first appearance, lore that ran deep enough to touch the Earth's core, Uzi and her friends becoming more lovable with each passing second, the music becoming more awesome when you least expected it. And breathe. I gotta say, I have been enjoying the story so far with all its twists and turns. Episode 2 was the point where that story got way more complicated and compelling than what the pilot led on. And Uzi and Thad, remember Thad versus a giant robot worm snake horror thing? Who could have seen that? Oh, and stuff like N's mansion flashback coming from the pilot. Then again, who could have foreseen episode 6 featuring Uzi and her friends fighting off tons of robot dinosaurs, a girl with antlers and gizmos glued to her helmet, and that girl's partner in crime, a robot cowboy spider baby. Don't even get me started on Uzi hacking into her boyfriend's memories in episode 5 and becoming a crow. I love how wacky this show can get, though I don't blame you if you needed to watch certain episodes a few times to fully understand what was going on, episode 5 in particular. People have argued that this show is going so fast it's making Sonic the Hedgehog jealous. I can understand where they're coming from. However, I actually think the fast pacing works more often than not. Even in the moments where it is a problem, again, episode 5 in particular, it's not that big a deal to me. This can also come down to personal preference. Some people simply prefer slower pacing, and that's fine. The show's comedic elements have gotten so much better overall since the pilot, not to mention how much better the show's gotten at blending those with its darker aspects. As for character design, all I'll say in that regard is this. We salute you, Worker Drone 029, or Olivia, or whatever the fandom decides your name shall be. You, your green eyes, and your green hair were more memorable than that one guy from episode 2 who kinda looked like Uzi's dad. You know, this guy. On the flip side, I've always loved how Murder Drones depicts human characters. They're just silhouettes, featureless visages with big glowing eyes. And then Tessa showed up in the flesh at the end of episode 3 wearing a spacesuit with a giant bow and a hat on her helmet. Yet every time we get a close-up shot of her face... creepy. It's almost like the show wants you to wonder, is Tessa not who she says she is? Anyways, Murder Drones' biggest strength to me is its main cast. I love all of them. Seriously, I don't know if I have a favorite. They're that good in my view. And the resident cinnamon roll who specializes in being a goof and whose smile must be protected at all costs. Uzi, the ball of angst you want to hug so bad because you know f***ed up things are happening to her. V, the bloodthirsty, oil-thirsty psycho who's turned into someone who will do anything to protect her friends. Oh man, since I mentioned her, let's go in depth about V for a moment. We all know what happened to her at the end of episode 6. I'm just gonna say it, I'm one of those who's still hoping she'll return someday. Maybe not by the end of season 1, but at some point during season 2. If we get a season 2, that is. I mean, we didn't see her get killed, so if she comes back, take your pick as to how. Clone body plus her original consciousness and memories, rebuilt using parts from that disassembly drone corpse pile we saw in episode 6. She becomes Eldritch V, Jay winds up saving her. But if she's gone for good, we'll miss her. I'll miss her. I love seeing V's character develop from who she was in the pilot to the end of episode 6. While I can understand why some people say she was underutilized as a character, she was still one of my favorites. Actually, if I really needed to pick a favorite, it'd be V. If she's gone, I don't know what to say outside of, En's gonna feel her loss big time. Lizzie too, if she ever finds out what happened to her prom bestie. It is worth noting that Nola Klopp, V's voice actor, posted a video where she explained that even she doesn't know what'll happen with V going forward. That's after she sang bits of the song that played over episode 6's end credits, Eternal Dream, a song that fits V perfectly, even if it was originally sung by Uzi's voice actor, Elsie Lovelock. Again, if V doesn't come back, if she's gone for good, all I can say is, fly high, Angel of Death. Fly high. All that aside, in case you're wondering about my thoughts on Uzi and N's relationship, I feel like I can't say much about that considering, well, let's face it, some pretty f***ed up things will happen to either or both of them in the next 2 episodes. On top of what's happened to them already. Still, I'm all for it. I'll admit that I'm not into shipping, but seeing them hang out with each other and be so happy and wholesome together is fun. Speaking of fun, how about the show's major supporting cast? Characters like everyone's favorite undead Russian cannibal techno-mage, Doll. Everyone's favorite dingo-fighting Australian who loves to human everywhere, Tessa. If indeed that is Tessa. And Jay. They're awesome too, especially Jay. Jay needs more screen time, and I hope episode 7 is where she gets another chance to shine. Then there's Sin. Just Sin. Silly little Sin in her ability to destroy planets like Earth by spawning collapsed stars out of thin air thanks to her absolute solver infection. I made a comment about that in one of my Murder Drones fan games videos, and people have been bugging me endlessly about that ever since episode 6 landed. Needless to say, that comment aged pretty well. Obviously, the characters are only part of why I love Murder Drones so much. Let's talk about the voice actors pouring their hearts out into them. They deserve all the credit in the world for making their characters that much more amazing. Elsie Lovelock and Nola Klopp, as I've already mentioned. Michael Kovac as N. Alana Fitzgerald as Sin and the Absolute Solver. And all the other voice talents who have contributed to the show during the almost 2 years since that pilot episode. If any of you are watching this, you are awesome. And I don't know how Murder Drones would be possible without you. Of course, I cannot forget about people like Liam Vickers here. He's the one who created this crazy universe to begin with, and he and all the people working on the show, writing the story and handling the animation, also the people running Murder Drones' marketing machine, deserve all the kudos they can get too. There are other great things about Murder Drones I could discuss, like how it loves to play with horror tropes and twist them around into something unique and of its own. As someone who loves horror movies, it was a thrill to see, for instance, episode 4 playing out like a slasher movie, Oh, and I lost count of the number of times I needed to restrain myself from making this entire video about how sublime and earwormy the show's music is. AJ Dispirito, take a bow. Get Prommed, The Knife Dance, the aforementioned Eternal Dream. The music is the icing on top of this, I don't know how else to say it, this amazing series that, as I've said a trillion times by now, I cannot recommend enough. I'm glad I gave Murder Drones another go a few months back. It's not without its flaws, and the fandom's kinda iffy, but nothing's stopping me from hopping on board the Murder Drones Episode 7 hype train. People are speculating that either Uzi or N will be dead by the end of Episode 7. Only time will tell what happens in that regard, and in any case, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. I have a playlist of the other Murder Drones videos I've made, and I'll link that in a card at the end. If you want to see more in the future, please consider doing all the typical supporting people on YouTube things. Like the video, subscribe, ring that bell, and leave a comment if you want. If you want to throw some money at me so I can keep making videos like this, I'll drop links to my Patreon and Ko-fi in this video's description. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye for now.